Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today I am finishing a 3D print. Of the 650 or so videos I have here on the channel, very few of them are actually 3D printed. And it's just not something that I do a whole lot of. This particular 3D print has been sitting in my supply closet for over a year and a half. Recently, I have been talking a lot about issues that I have. I feel like as a society, we need to normalize talking about our mental health. And the past couple of videos, I've been kind of getting off of my chest a lot of issues that I am dealing with. And I thought that this particular topic would be something that would resonate with a lot of people. I am an overthinker. And as a teacher, I basically train my brain to do that. Making lesson plans, thinking about misconceptions, how to modify lessons to fit the lower level kids and the higher level kids, and every and anything in between, extensions in case something goes wrong. And the problem with teaching your brain to do this is a lot of times you have a hard time shutting it off. Put on top of that a bunch of other things, family issues, social anxiety, abandonment issues, a number of other life-changing stressful things that could compact into that, and it just over-exacerbates my brain. And I've lost sleep, I've lost friendships, I've lost a number of things. Social anxiety, it tallies up. So I thought it would be poignant, especially for this particular build, to take something that is simple, finishing a 3D print, and intentionally overthink it. So I'm going to try a bunch of different techniques. Hopefully you'll learn some new ones, and maybe we can make this a cohesive thing at the end. So without further ado, today we are taking a Punisher mask and making it look cool, hopefully. Let's get to building. To all my overthinkers out there, I started this build almost 2 years ago, a 3D printed Punisher mask by kencam on Thingiverse. I'll link his stuff down in the description. Since then, it's mostly sat in the closet, unfinished. I picked it up more than a dozen times, thinking about all the possibilities. Maybe you're guilty of this too. You get stuck in analysis paralysis, unsure what the first step should be. And the longer you stare at it, the louder the thoughts become. Is this mask even cool enough? What could I do differently? Has anyone else done this before? Will anyone watch this video? Is this good content? What if I mess it up? Before long, questions turn into hundreds. When it comes to crafting, I usually don't struggle to make the decision. The real problem comes afterward. I second guess everything. I pick apart every flaw and overanalyze every detail until something I was excited about suddenly doesn't feel good enough anymore. Overthinking has convinced me to throw away dozens of projects over the years because I've taught myself into believing they weren't worthy enough to become a video. I roll out my silicone mat and coat part of the mask with UV resin. It's quickly become one of my favorite ways to finish a 3D print, but like I mentioned in the intro, we're going to complicate things by trying several different finishing techniques across the mask. Overthinking is the exhausting habit of analyzing situations, conversations, or decisions so much that it creates stress, worry, and mental paralysis instead of clarity. We've all experienced it. Maybe you're out with a friend and can't decide where you want to eat. Maybe you're planning a date and want to choose the perfect activities. Maybe you send a text, they don't reply for a while, and suddenly you're rereading every word you wrote, second-guessing what you did. Or maybe it's the night before something stressful, and you're lying awake, staring at the ceiling, while your mind races through every possible outcome. The hardest part is that most of these scenarios never happen, but your brain makes you live through every single one of them. Overthinking can make us spend so much time preparing for problems that don't exist that we forget to enjoy the moments happening right in front of us. If you've ever relayed a conversation, questioned a decision, or worried yourself into exhaustion, just know you're not alone. It's something I've struggled with for years, and this project became a reminder that sometimes the hardest step isn't creating something perfect, it's giving yourself permission to start. For this portion, I'm going to use Mod Podge and toilet paper of all things to help get rid of the print lines. This method is basically replacing one texture for another. Out of the 4 techniques I tried, this was probably the roughest, but it was also one of the easiest to apply. Most people believe overthinking is driven by an overactive stress response, a deep desire to stay safe, preparing for the worst possible outcomes, or a defense mechanism shaped by past experiences. Your brain convinces you that worrying will protect you from future mistakes, but instead, it traps you in a painful cycle. When your mind is constantly preparing for the worst, the people around you might not always understand. They may see you as dramatic, difficult, overly sensitive, or even just a negative person, and that misunderstanding can make the cycle even worse. You start questioning yourself, wondering if your thoughts are a burden to others, and eventually you begin hiding what you're feeling. I found myself doing this many times, keeping my thoughts to myself because explaining them feels like it will only add more fuel to the fire. But the truth is, carrying all of those thoughts alone can be even heavier. Another method I like is adding 2-part sculpting epoxy over the top. This transforms your 3D print into a base that you can build on, allowing you to add your own details and embellishments. For this, I'm using Freeform Air by Smooth On. A little water helps keep the epoxy from sticking to your hands, and if you let it sit for an hour, it becomes much more easier to shape and sculpt. The irony of this video is not lost on me. I'm literally overthinking different techniques to make a prop about overthinking. The process of creating this video has been filled with hundreds of tiny decisions and questions. What part should I highlight? What should I leave out? Is this clip good enough? Is my commentary good enough? Am I good enough? And that's the trap of overthinking. It takes something you love and slowly convinces you that it's not enough. Instead of enjoying the process, you start judging every little detail and searching for flaws that might not even matter. Sometimes the hardest person to impress isn't the audience watching, it's the voice inside your own head. Overthinking doesn't just steal our time, it steals our joy. It makes us forget why we started creating in the first place. We chase perfection so hard that we stop appreciating progress. The truth is, the things we create don't have to be perfect to matter. Sometimes finishing something imperfect is far more meaningful than endlessly chasing something that will never feel good enough. The last patch is just 2 coats of automotive primer. With all the different textures and finishes, I had to figure out how to make these sections feel connected. After about an hour of staring at the mask and brainstorming, I considered sanding it down, blending the techniques together, or just painting everything differently. Then an idea came to me that I loved. There's a traditional Japanese art form known as kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired using gold, silver, or platinum. Instead of hiding the cracks, the artist highlights them by turning their imperfections into something beautiful. This idea really hit home, not just for this silly prop, but for life in general. A lot of my overthinking comes from wanting to do my best, wanting to make people proud, wanting to avoid disappointing others. It's that impossible pursuit of perfection that can leave you feeling like nothing you do is ever enough. How fitting is it that an art form exists that celebrates the flaws instead of hiding them? Kintsugi reminds us that something broken or imperfect can still have value, purpose, and beauty. The cracks become part of the story. They show the history of what something has been through rather than something that needs to be covered up. So adding hot glue to create these divisions on the mask ended up doing something I never expected. It didn't separate the piece. It brought everything together. To unify the different surface finishes, I spray painted it a base coat of black. Painting this Frankenstein together mask will almost instantly make the differences disappear. As makers, we often spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to create a perfectly pristine surface, only to turn around in a few steps later and add damage, weathering, and imperfections. Creating that perfect base gives us more control. It can also remove those happy little accidents that make something unique. Bob Ross built a career around reminding people to embrace the mistakes, because sometimes the things we think are flaws become the best part of the painting. Your brain is a mysterious thing. It can be the source of incredible creativity and inspiration, but that same mind can also become the place where your darkest thoughts live. When your thoughts are constantly racing, it feels impossible to catch your breath. For me, crowded spaces can become overwhelming. I start worrying about bumping into people, feeling trapped, someone taking advantage of me, or losing the person that I'm with. As a 6'3" large person, I find myself instinctively trying to make myself smaller. I tense up, my breathing changes, and suddenly my own thoughts are creating a physical response I can't easily control. My overthinking doesn't just stay in my mind, it takes over my body. And in those moments, it can feel terrifying, like something is seriously wrong, like I'm fighting a battle that no one else can see. After my base colors are down, I added a little water to my brush, picked up some paint, and started adding drips and splatters across the surface. This is all about dirtying up the mask, adding more irregularity, and creating a layer of chaos that helps unify all the different textures and techniques. In a strange way, the imperfections are what makes everything work together. And I think our mind can be the same way. When you're stuck in a cycle of overthinking, the goal isn't to completely erase those thoughts. That might not even be possible. Our brains are designed to analyze, solve problems, and look for patterns. The goal is learning how to quiet the thoughts that are holding us back and stop letting them control every decision we make. Just like these layers of paint soften the harsh transition between different textures, we can learn to soften the edges of our thoughts. What if everything goes wrong? We can start asking, what if it works out? Instead of focusing on every possible mistake, we can allow ourselves to trust the process. Overthinking often comes from wanting to control, wanting certainty, and wanting to protect yourself from failure. But sometimes the only way forward is accepting that we won't have every answer before we begin. That failure is part of the process in prop making and in life. We don't have to dwell in them to be better the next time. Let go of the weight and take another step forward. I need to paint all of the kintsugi division lines black first. This creates contrast, allowing the gold paint to stand out and really shine. So I carefully hand painted each raised ridge, and once it dried, I come back with a gold acrylic paint pen to highlight every crack and imperfection. The process reminds me that sometimes the things we want to hide are the exact things that deserve the most attention. The same can be true with our thoughts. When your mind gets stuck in overthinking loops, the goal isn't to fight every thought or pretend it isn't there. It's learning how to redirect your focus and create space between yourself and those thoughts. Just like the black lines create a foundation for gold to shine, grounding techniques can create a foundation for a calmer mind. The 3-3-3 method is one simple tool. Identify 3 things you can see, 3 things you can hear, and 3 parts of your body. It pulls your attention away from the endless possibilities in your head and brings you back to the present. Another technique that works pretty good for me is box breathing. Slowly breathing in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and then hold again for 4. It helps calm your nervous system and reminds your body that you are safe. Overthinking tells us we need to solve everything right now, but sometimes the first step isn't finding the answer, it's creating enough quiet to see the answer clearly. We can't always control the thoughts that enter our mind, but we can learn how much power we give them. I scribbled some graphite onto the back of the Punisher printout. This creates a simple transfer method that allows me to trace the basic contours of the character onto the mask. It won't be an exact copy, but it gives me the set of guidelines to follow as I start painting the design. And I think that's an important lesson when dealing with overthinking. Sometimes we don't need a perfect map of where we are going. We just need enough direction to take the next step. Overthinkers often get stuck because we want every detail figured out before we begin. We want the perfect plan, the perfect answer, the guarantee that everything will work out just fine. But life rarely gives us that. Sometimes the best thing we can do is create a rough outline and trust ourselves to adjust along the way. One way to break the cycle is to focus on the next small step instead of the entire journey. Write your thoughts down and get them out of your head. Give yourself a deadline to make a decision instead of an endless searching for the perfect choice. When your mind starts to spiral, ask yourself, is this something I can solve, or is it just something I'm worrying about? Overthinking makes every thought feel urgent, but not every thought deserves your attention. Sometimes we just need a starting point and the courage to begin. Using some acrylic paint pens and my reference image close by, I begin adding the character to my mask. Once I finish the black details, I go back around the edges and highlight areas with a white pen to add contrast and make the design stand out. This process reminds me of something important when supporting someone who struggles with overthinking. Sometimes they don't need someone to fix their problems. They need someone who will help bring clarity to the chaos. If you know someone who overthinks, one of the best things you can do for them is listen without immediately trying to solve everything. Let them talk through their thoughts without making them feel like they are being dramatic or irrational. Sometimes simply saying, I can understand why that feels overwhelming, can make someone feel less alone. Remind them of what is real, not just what their anxiety is predicting. Encourage them to take things one step at a time and celebrate the small wins they might overlook. And most importantly, be patient. Overthinking isn't something someone chooses to do. It's often their brain trying to protect them, even if it ends up causing more stress. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give an overthinker is reassurance that they don't have to have everything figured out right now. They are allowed to make mistakes, change their mind, and still be valued. Along with the Punisher iconography, I wanted to add a few quotes that connected with both the theme of the character and the theme of this video. I made sure to spread them out, spacing between each one so that the design could breathe and the details could stand out. In the same way, we need to create space in our mind. Overthinking may seem like just a habit, but living in that constant state of worry can take a real toll on our health. When your brain is always searching for problems, your body can start to react as if it's in danger. Stress levels rise, sleep can suffer, your energy gets drained, and it becomes harder to enjoy the moments happening around you. The hardest part is that overthinking often disguises itself as preparation. We convince ourselves we are just being responsible, planning ahead, or trying to avoid mistakes. But there is a difference between preparing for life and constantly living in fear of it. Learning to quiet those thoughts doesn't mean you stop caring or stop trying. It means giving yourself permission to breathe, rest, and trust yourself. Just like this mask needs balance between all of the different elements, our mind needs balance too. We can still strive to do our best while accepting that mistakes and imperfections are part of being human, because if we spend all our time trapped in our own thoughts, we might miss the life happening right in front of us. I'm now adding blood effects to the mask, not because I think the mask necessarily needs it, but because this build is demonstrating overthinking, so why not throw everything at it? Plus the contrast between the black, white, and gold with the deep red of the blood adds another layer of interest and makes the details stand out even more. And I think that's an important thing to understand about overthinking. Sometimes we confuse it with the things that are actually strengths. Overthinking isn't the same as caring, being responsible, or wanting to do your best. Those qualities can be amazing, but they can become unhealthy when it turns into impossible expectations. Overthinking can look like perfectionism, procrastination, or endlessly searching for the perfect decision because you're afraid of making the wrong one. It can feel like you're being productive because you're planning and preparing, but sometimes you just get stuck. It can also be connected to anxiety, where your brain tries to protect you from problems that haven't even happened yet. The goal isn't to stop caring or stop thinking deeply. Those things are often what makes us creative. The goal is learning when your thoughts are helping you move forward and when they are holding you back. Just like the mask has many different elements fighting for attention, our minds can become overwhelmed when everything feels equally important. Sometimes we have to decide what deserves our focus and what we need to let go of. I think the mask would look cooler if I blacked out the eyes and the nose opening, so I took a sheer black material and hot glued it to the inside edges. This small change creates a much darker, more intimidating look while still allowing the mask to function. And I think that's a good reminder to someone struggling with overthinking. Sometimes the things happening inside our mind can feel hidden from everyone else. We can put on a mask, act like everything is fine, and carry those thoughts quietly by ourselves. But you are not alone. There are so many people out there fighting battles in their own mind that others never see. If you struggle with overthinking, anxiety, or feeling trapped in your own thoughts, know that you're seen and your experiences are valid. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who care about you. Let them in. Sometimes just saying the thoughts out loud can take away some of their power. Find the thing that brings you peace, whether that's creating, exercising, spending time with a loved one, getting outside and touching grass, or simply taking a moment to breathe. There is no single solution that works for everyone, but there is a path forward. You don't have to have everything figured out today. Give yourself the same patience and kindness that you would give someone else, because you deserve it too. This is a headband that once had horns on it, the cheap kind that you find at a Halloween store that lights up. I used the horns for another project and finally got around to finding a purpose for those little lights with the battery pack. I glued them to a transparent packing material and attached them to the inside of the sheer fabric of the mask. Once powered on, they create a soft glow behind the eyes, and I think that's a beautiful reminder of something we can all be for each other. A light. Sometimes the people around us are fighting battles we know nothing about. A simple message, a kind word, or taking the time to really listen can make a bigger difference than we realize. You don't always have to have the perfect advice or the perfect solution. Sometimes just being present is enough. When a friend reaches out, answer. When someone seems like they're struggling, remind them they're not alone. Small acts of kindness can be the thing that helps someone through a difficult moment. We spend so much time chasing accomplishments and worrying about what comes next that we sometimes forget the most important thing we have is the time we share with people we love. Be the person who brings light into someone else's life, because sometimes the smallest spark is enough to remind someone that they aren't walking through the darkness alone. The last step is adding the banding so I can actually wear the mask if I wanted to. I stretch the band around the back of my head, just past my ears to find the right size, then secure the ends of the mask using some foam and super glue. And just like that, the mask is pretty much complete. But this project became about so much more than creating a cool prop. This mask started as something I abandoned because I overthought every possibility. I questioned if it was good enough, if people would care, and if it was worth finishing. But along the way I realized that imperfections weren't the problem. They were what made it unique. I think we are a lot like this mask. We spend so much time trying to hide our flaws, fix every mistake, and become some perfect version of ourselves. But our struggles, our scars, and the things we overcome are part of our story. They show that we have grown. If you are someone who overthinks, remember that you're not alone. Your thoughts do not define you, and you are not a burden because your mind works differently. Give yourself grace. Take things one step at a time. Find the things that bring you peace, and let the people who care about you be there for you. I hope this video reminds someone that they are seen, they are valued, and they are capable of creating something beautiful, even when life feels imperfect. And if this made you think of someone who needs to hear that, share this with them. Sometimes a small reminder that someone cares can make a bigger difference than we realize. And we are finished. Here is the end result. Overall, I think it turned out pretty cool. It is definitely a unique piece, and after all the paint and extra bits put on there, it's kind of hard to tell that it was finished 4 different ways. And continued piling random things on there just to kind of complicate it on purpose, as I said in the intro. Yeah. Maybe you will try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to problem solve, to pivot on a dime, to potentially not drive yourself crazy overthinking about what you could or couldn't have done better. Yeah. Maybe you'll get some. Yay! And inevitably, they're going to ask you, how'd you make that? Give them one of these. Tell them, much props. Probably going to hang on a wall for the majority of its days, but I still think it's pretty cool. Don't overthink the small stuff, and when you do make a decision, let it go. Peace out. If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and you'd like to see more builds like this one, please consider joining these awesome people listed here with me over on my Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together.